We talk a lot about the candidate's point of view about adapting resumes for the job description, how to hack applicant tracking system, and how to prepare for an interview with the recruiter. But how do recruiters actually see us and our resumes? How do they select who to move forward with and who to reject? And why do recruiters actually reject us? We will find out in today's episode. Stay tuned. I'm Anna Naumova. I am a principal product manager with experience at such companies like Apple and career coach for immigrants who want to start their work in tech field in the US. And you are on my podcast channel. If you need to create an awesome resume, improve your LinkedIn profile, and build a job search strategy, visit my website, annanaumova.com, and book a call with me. And I also launched an Instagram with short videos from my interviews, just 1 minute a day, and you will have a succinct piece of advice from me and my guests. All right, I want to introduce my guest today, David Kimball, Senior Talent Director at Candidate Labs, recruiting firm that matches technical talents with top-tier startups. Hi, David, and thanks for joining me today. Happy to see you.
Happy to see you again. Thanks for inviting me to your show. I hope we have a very interesting topic lined up for today. So I hope we can help a lot of people by sharing my experience.
And that's super useful because I usually talk from the candidate's perspective, from the coach perspective, and I've always been interested in the recruiter's perspective to see that. So I hope it will help us today. So can you please briefly walk me through your background and experience and tell me about yourself?
Yeah, happy to. As you said, I'm a recruiter, and there's two types of recruiters. We have in-house recruiters, which I think most candidates think about when you say a recruiter. These are people who work at a specific company, like maybe at Facebook. The recruiter works at Facebook and hires people exclusively for Facebook. I'm an agency recruiter, which means I work with multiple companies, sometimes 10 or 15 at a time, and they're all hiring for different types of positions. So as an agency recruiter, I get to interact with a lot of different companies, a lot of different candidates, whether it's software engineers, product managers, sales, marketing. So hopefully I'll have a good, number of examples I can share with you on how to interview with companies and how to interview with recruiters specifically.
Perfect. Sales, product managers, marketing managers. I think that we have a good scope of job titles. And can you maybe give me a few examples of the company you work with?
Yeah, some of the companies we work with that maybe your listeners might be familiar with are Notion. I know you mentioned Notion as a great place to keep your notes. Deal, Retool is a very popular software engineering app. And then there's a lot of other seed stage companies that I'm working with right now in the AI space. A lot of them went through Y Combinator. So these are young founders who launched their companies the past, 3-4 years.
Perfect. So if you would like to work at Notion, please watch this video. I love Notion. I personally use Notion a lot. So yeah, give us a thumb up if you use Notion as well.
Yeah, I love Notion too.
Yeah. Perfect. So let's start with the market situation. So what's going on in tech job market right now in 2024? Like how many applicants do you personally receive for each job posting, and what do the numbers of application depends on?
Yeah, maybe to start with kind of the broader theme that I think everyone is seeing and experiencing is that layoffs are still happening. It's in the news all the time, like Tesla just laid off 10% of their workforce.
Yeah, 2,500 in Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. So we think that this is continuing to happen in 2024. big companies are laying off people, small startups are running out of money and are shutting down, laying off people. And maybe to give sort of the context on why this is happening, the past couple of years, interest rates in the US were very low. That meant that investors could borrow money cheaply. They could invest in riskier investments like startups. So a lot of startups were growing, hiring people, thinking that they will grow. But as we saw interest rates coming up a little bit, we see this, with houses, everything is more expensive now, inflation. The same thing is happening for borrowing money, and companies just can't afford to have that many employees. So the theme, and we'll come back to this later on in the show, the whole theme of the hiring game is getting more done with less. So if you're a candidate, you might be facing a lot of competition trying to get hired, because there's a lot of people who are not employed right now and trying to get rehired, and there's fierce competition.
Yeah, but talking about your specific job, like companies, how many applications do you receive for
Yes.
each
So
position? I've heard a
yeah,
lot of stories about like thousands, like hundreds, etc.
I can give you an example. Because I'm an agency recruiter, I don't directly receive applications, right? But I do see the applications that the companies get I'm working with. One of the companies I'm working with right now, it's an early stage startup. They're hiring for one software and an engineer. They had over 500 applicants, right?
It's
Over
startup.
500 people applied to a
No name,
startup.
no name. Yeah, we kind of can call it no name
I
startup,
can't
or it's
I
like
can't
famous.
I can't call the name, but it's a
Uh,
Series B startup,
yeah,
and they're backed by Sequoia, one of the biggest
yeah.
venture capitalists.
I meant that it's not like a huge companies like Meta, Google, Apple with the brand name.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's just like no name. I called it no name. It's not super famous startup.
It's
Uh,
small. They have about
small.
20 people, and still
Yeah, still
500
500.
people applied. But here's what's interesting. They're also working with 4 different recruiting agencies. One of them are ours. And I was looking at the ATS today, the applicant tracking system, and they have 19 people interviewing right now, but only 1 or 2 of them are people who actually applied. So that means everyone else got in through a connection or a recruiting agency. So imagine there's 500 people who applied, but no one's even looking at their resume. There's just no time.
Wow, that's interesting. So how to find this job? So what does it mean like through the agency? So agency posted the job description, or agencies recruiters actually reached out? So like candidates,
Yeah.
how does it work? Yeah.
Yeah, the way it works often with startups, especially, is that they'll say, I need to hire a software engineer or a backend engineer or whatever position. And they'll send that job to different recruiting agencies. And then we try to recruit the right type of person. So the idea here is they have a very specific type of person in mind they want to hire, and we try to find that exact fit.
How do you look for this exact fit?
Yeah, well, that's the magic, right? That's the secret of the industry of being a recruiter.
Are you like just browsing like on LinkedIn, or like how do you do that? I'm
No,
just
but
thinking from the candidate's perspective,
yeah,
how to be visible for you.
yeah. To be completely transparent, I do all of my searching on LinkedIn. So if there's a candidate who wants to get into a startup, I think it's going to be very challenging if you don't know either someone at that company or the founder of the company or a recruiter. Because just applying through the company's website, there's so much competition that, they might not even look at your resume. So maybe that's like one of the advice I can share right now, even, is that if you want to work with a startup as a candidate, you need to know someone who is connected with the startup. Recruiters are connected with the startup, right? Because we work together, or try and find someone who's already working there.
You need to know someone. That's like the question, how to know someone. So
Yeah. I
if
mean,
especially if I'm new in the country, so because I'm focusing mostly on immigrants, so a lot of people just arrived to the US recently, and how to build this network, how to know the founders of those companies.
yeah, what I would do and what I have done in the past is, if you know the exact company you want to work for, right? Actually, let me go back one step. If I was a candidate, I would try to narrow down my job search to roles that I have experience in, and they're very aligned to my background. Because with all the competition, the role needs to be a great fit for me as a candidate and what I've done in the past. And then when I know which company and which position I want to apply for, I would go on LinkedIn, see if there's anyone else who works at that company, see if we're connections. And if we're not, I could just send them a LinkedIn connection request, and I'd say, hey, I just wanted to reach out to let you know that I applied to your company, and I'm curious if you have 5 minutes to kind of chat about what to expect on the interview, or if there's any tips you can share about the hiring manager. And I've done this in the past, and in my experience, generally people are pretty open to connecting with you and maybe sharing some advice.
So that's interesting, because I have this question, but this question is at the end. But since we're talking about building a network and connecting with hiring managers and recruiter, I will ask these questions for you, Ivan, before we walk through all the process of browsing the job and like selecting the right candidates. So how many messages do you receive from candidates on LinkedIn right now? Because you shared your personal experience of reaching out people, but now you're on the opposite side, you're a recruiter, and I bet you receive a lot of messages from candidates. So, and how effective it is right now in 2024 to reach out to recruiters directly via LinkedIn, and maybe you can share some best practices.
Yeah. So when someone reaches out to me, I always try to at least respond. Because I'm focused on startups specifically, there's not always a good match. So people reach out to me saying that they want to get connected, see if there's a role I'm working on where their experience could be a good match. Often there's not, but I think it's fine. And if there is, then that's great for me. I don't have to find someone. I can just talk to them, help them out. Um, if I would give advice to candidates, is feel free to reach out to recruiters. But if they don't respond, just assume that they saw the message and maybe there's just not a great fit and they didn't have enough time to get back to you. So I wouldn't take it personally, not get offended if a recruiter doesn't get back to you, because you have to understand it's in the recruiter's best interest to place you somewhere. So if they checked out your background, your experience is one that matches a company that they're hiring for, then most likely they'll get back to you.
Okay, that's great to hear that. That is actually recruiters are actually interested in reaching out, like, or connecting with the great candidates. So because sometimes I've heard, oh, like recruiters are like, I don't know, not responsive, and they asking me a weird question that like they put me in the hard situation to answer. The recruiter actually are not interested in talking to me, blah, blah, blah. So I heard a lot of that backlash around recruiters. But now you mentioned that recruiters are interested, yeah, in dealing with like candidates and kind of promoting good candidates towards the pipeline, right?
Yeah, I think what's important to understand is that recruiters usually specialize in an area. So maybe there's recruiters who focus on just software engineers. There's recruiters like me who focus on hiring for startups. There's recruiters who hire for large companies. And so those are very different types of candidates they'll be talking to. But if a candidate reaches out to me who has startup experience, wants to work at a startup, and generally is a candidate that I think can be placed at a startup, I'll definitely talk to them.
Perfect, perfect. So what's the best practices candidates should follow when messaging yourself, like or any other recruiters? How to frame the
Yeah.
message? How to, I don't know, like what should they do?
Here's how I think about it. I think that whenever you're asking someone for a favor and you're reaching out, you should try to provide value or make it as easy as possible. So if you're a candidate and you're reaching out to a recruiter, you should make it easy. And in your message, say why you're reaching out, um, what you're looking for, and what's your specific background, maybe in, just in a couple sentences. And also at the end, I think it's polite to just say, it's okay if there's not a fit right now. I completely understand. And then it comes across as, I understand you're busy. Maybe there's not a fit, but I wanted to kind of let you know that I'm looking. If my background is a fit, then I'm happy to chat. Something like that.
Perfect. Yeah, just easy, simple, I don't know, like and provide value. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
And very low effort. Because if you reach out to a recruiter saying, hey, do you have any roles that could be a fit? That's asking a lot. Like
Let's
recruiters
just
are
search,
very,
right? Yeah.
it's very busy. It's like I have to go to the LinkedIn profile, look into the companies, try to understand if the LinkedIn even makes sense. I try to understand, okay, what's sort of the person's experience, where they, what is it that they want? So it puts a lot of work on the other
Yeah,
person.
yeah, make it easy for recruiters. I agree with you. Perfect. Let's come back to the applications. So we talked about the number of application, and you gave me some perfect example of 500 application for software engineer. So, which job titles are more competitive right now, and which are less competitive? Do you have
I
more
think
than
this is
500? Yeah.
I think this is a very interesting question, and the answer might surprise you. Maybe this is not the correct answer, but this is how I see it, right? I think recruiters right now is a very competitive role to try to join a company. And the reason is because when the companies don't have money and they're not hiring, they don't need recruiters. Recruiters are expensive to keep at the company if there's no hiring going on. So a bunch of the recruiters were laid off. Um, a lot of startups don't need internal recruiters and they'll just work with agencies kind of on a contract basis to hire someone. So there's a lot of recruiters on the market trying to get a new role, and it's very competitive. I've heard stories of a recruiting position getting opened up and getting 1,500 applications in 24 hours.
Yeah. So, but what's which job titles like more competitive? Because you mentioned that you're not only working with software engineers, you also work with like higher sales, marketing, product managers. So, which one are like kind of in demand right now, more and
Mm.
less? Yeah.
Yeah, so software engineers are in demand, but it's very competitive in the sense that there's a lot of AI startups hiring right now, and they want a very specific skill set. So if you shared this video earlier on YouTube where someone made the fake resume with the Stanford education.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
actually very true. Like for whatever reason, startups like these types of profiles. Ivy League education for like Stanford, Harvard, um, worked at a startup, maybe founded their own company.
Uh,
Software engineers with that background have no problem finding a position. They're interviewing with 10 companies, they get 5 offers, and they just pick the one they like the most.
So if you
But
have Stanford and Google, Apple, and your resume, you don't need to worry about your like job search, right?
right.
If you did a bullshit, yeah, like selling LSD or what was in that resumes, yeah. So, but I think the majority of people do not have actually those titles
I
in
agree. And I think it's
names.
very difficult because you might be a great, strong software engineer, for instance, very skilled, But if you didn't work at the right companies or you didn't go to the quote unquote right school, it's hard to get discovered. It's not that they don't want to hire you, but when someone looks at your LinkedIn profile or your resume, just compared to all the other types of resumes you look at, it's like, I don't really know. So it's too easy to get passed up on.
And what to do, what you can recommend for those applicants or
Yeah,
candidates without like Stanford and Google in the background?
I think probably the best thing to do well, you want to get recognized, right? You just want to get your foot in the door to prove that you're a great engineer. And the only way to do that, I think, is networking, talking to someone who already works at the company, somehow get in front of the hiring manager to get to a point where they'll talk to you. And once you talk to them, you can prove that you're great for the job. What's hard is getting noticed because there's so much noise, right? There's so many candidates on the market. It's kind of like swiping right on Tinder. Like it's really hard to know if someone's great when you're just like looking at a ton of profiles.
That's a great analogy, like swiping on Tinder when you have so many candidates and so many like options to select. And yeah, I remember the rules of three. Yeah, like from Apple, don't make a lot of choice for your clients. Just have your only three to have it easy to select. Yeah, do you
Yeah.
remember that? Like Apple has only like three models, three colors, three something. Yeah, and now we have 3,000 options. So what's going on with sales, marketing, and product managers right now in the market?
Yeah, sales. So that's an interesting dynamic. There were these companies that really took off during COVID, like Airtable, maybe you recognize Product Board, these like product-led growth companies. They were like very trendy, very sexy type of companies. They went through hyper growth. Um, and so the people who worked at those companies kind of got lucky because everyone thinks, oh, wow, that's a great company. We need to interview this person. So it's easy for them to get their foot in the door to talk to the hiring manager. But what we're discovering is that their success wasn't due to them being like great or super talented. It was they were at the right place at the right time. And the company grew not because the employee was great, but they were just lucky. It kind of took off. So that's sort of the challenge I'm seeing in terms of sales and marketing people is often they were at the right company, but they can't really speak to the levers that they pulled to grow the company. Um, so there's people, who are shiny on the surface. They look like a great candidate, but they kind of fall short in terms of delivering impact or really
Mm.
understand how they were able to grow the company.
So, and how to stand out here? Like, for example, I'm personally a product manager, so I see a lot of competition in my positions. So, what's how to stand out? Like, if I don't
Yeah.
have Stanford, I know that
Yeah.
Stanford makes a lot of sense, but
No, yeah. I think, once you start interviewing with the company, often what they're looking for is that you really understand why you did the things you did and can tie it back to the business. So often when I'm interviewing software engineers, I'm not a software engineer, right? So I can't really talk about the technical aspects and what programming language they use. I don't care about that. What I care about is that they can explain to me what the company does that they worked for, what are some important projects that they worked on, and why did the project exist in the first place? Like, what was the business need for the project? Why did they get selected to work on the project? And if it was a team effort, what was their role? And this shows to me a couple of things. One is that they understand the business. They have this product mind where, they understand the work, why they're doing the work that they're doing. And another one is that they can communicate well and they're a good team player because they can explain to me in an easy to understand way what they did. That's always a positive sign. Like, how they say a master can simplify things enough so that a kid can understand.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially that's interesting. I understand that for sales and marketing and product managers that they have to understand business needs and explain from the business perspective. But it's interesting to hear that it's also applied for software engineers. They also should understand the business. Is that correct?
It might be specific to startups because startups are so small that everyone has to do a little bit of everything. And it's maybe different, at like Meta or Amazon, where you can come in as a junior developer and get assigned a ticket and just do it. But I think if you want to really stand out as a candidate, you should be able to talk about the business impact and really understand why you did the work you did.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, so let's talk about how do you look for candidates? And you already mentioned that you use LinkedIn a lot, but maybe you can give more examples or more like some hints, like how do you do that? I know that is magic. You mentioned that, but
Yeah.
I want to dig deeper. What's like the most important from in candidates? I don't know, like LinkedIn profile for you to be selected and to be visible for you instead of just reaching out to you and like hiring managers.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely talk about that. Maybe the overall theme I'm looking for in a LinkedIn profile is that it makes sense. And what I mean by that is I can look at the person's page and understand sort of the career trajectory. Like often I'll see software engineers who started out at Google, then they went to a smaller company, then they went to an even smaller company, and their software engineer maybe became senior and then staff level software engineer. So the story of a LinkedIn profile like that is like, okay, this person wanted to join a smaller company, maybe have more impact, maybe grow their career. And then they went to an even smaller company. They probably liked it. They probably got to learn a lot. And so there's this nice storyline that you look at the LinkedIn profile and you're like, okay, that makes sense. Um, on the other hand, if I see a profile where it's like they were a product marketer, then they went to software engineering, and now they're doing sales, then I look at it and I'm like, it doesn't really make sense. I don't understand. And maybe they're a great candidate, but I just don't immediately understand what they might be looking for. So there's a lot of effort that goes into trying to untangle the LinkedIn profile. So that's the number one thing I look for, is that the profile tells a story. And
That's
I've heard
great.
you talk about this a lot too, and I know that you agree.
I agree with you completely, and I work with my candidates on that. I also like open the resume, and I cannot understand who are you? Yeah, are you a software engineer? Are you a QA? Are you a DevOps? I don't know. Are you like manager? Are you an individual contributor? Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and it's very important to have a career trajectory and like in a story about you. So, and like, let's say that the candidate actually don't have this career trajectory. What should they do
Hmm. Well,
to attract your attention? I mean, like from the recruiter's perspective, like to fake.
yeah. No, I would not recommend lying on your LinkedIn profile. I can tell you what some other things I look for, and maybe we can kind
Yes.
of
Yeah,
brainstorm on
yeah,
what a
yeah,
candidate can do.
yeah.
So some other things that usually stand out to me in a profile, if I see fast career progression, maybe it's a
Mm-hmm.
salesperson, right? Maybe they started as a sales development rep, and then within a year they're an account executive, and then maybe within 2, 3 years they're sales manager. So there's again
Is
this
it good?
clear.
Is it good or bad for you? Like fast career
It's good. It's
progress.
good.
It's good.
It
Okay.
it generally is a signal to me that this person is good at what they do, so they're getting promoted.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. The opposite situation is that the person is working for the same position for 10 years.
Yes, that could be a yellow flag. I think that's something I would want to understand better. But the story I would tell myself is then, why hasn't this person gotten promoted? Like, what's the situation here?
Yeah, this is good to know. This is good to know. It's interesting for me. Okay. So the first one is career trajectory. The second is fast career progressions. What was
Another
another
one
one?
is tenure. If someone is at a company for a year and then goes to another company for a year and then another one for a year and a half and then 4 months, that's also a red flag. And there could be different explanations, but recruiters, hiring managers, we sort of jump to conclusions. And the way we look at a profile is that the person wasn't very good at their job, so they decided to leave, or in such a short amount of time, you really don't have the chance to contribute meaningfully to a company. So you probably, didn't get the depth of experience that comes with being at a company for 2, 3, 4 years. And I think you might be able to tell me better, but product management is kind of like that, right? You need like a year or two to really get into the product and like see a product through from like the beginning to kind of launch.
Yeah. The first 3 months, at least, like you're learning, just you're learning the product. Then you
Yeah.
started creating experiments. Then you need to build these experiments. Then you need to launch it and measure success and measure results. And from ideation, implementation, and measuring the results and getting actually significantly important results, it may have like, no, like 1 year. You're right. You're right. You
Yeah.
cannot even build, launch, and get results for like 3 months. That's why I'm very curious about this contract position for product managers for 6 months. And I've seen a
Hmm.
lot. What do you think about those contract position?
It kind of depends. I see a lot of contract positions for software engineers now, and usually
Yeah.
the idea is that they'll just do a test period. Like instead
Mm-hmm.
of interviewing someone, like do a whiteboarding session or an assignment, they'll just say, okay, come work with us for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. We see how good your coding skills are. We see how well we interact. Do you fit well in with the team? Um, and sometimes it works out well because the candidate gets paid. They don't have to spend time on like these coding assignments or, going through a bunch of interviews. And it's a better signal to the company that they're going to be a good fit or not. It's like a real
Mm-hmm.
life. It's like going on a date, right? Like if you
Yeah.
match with someone
Test.
on Tinder, you want to kind of meet them in person and figure out how you vibe together.
Yeah, that's true. You need like several dates, yeah, with
Yeah,
the
before making a commitment.
commitment to move forward or not. Yeah, that's true. That's interesting. So you mentioned career trajectory is important for you,
Yep.
fast career progression, not being a career switcher. And talking about career switchers, like you mentioned, like 1 year, right? Like a period of time, no less. Yeah.
I think,
What's
like if there's one or two situations where you were at a company for less than a year, it's not a flag yet. There's sometimes a reason. Often during COVID, people left their companies because, they
mm-hmm.
were laid off. But if it's, 5 or 6 times and the average tenure at a company is less than 2 years, then you wonder like what's
Okay.
going on. One or
Yeah.
two, not a big deal, but over and over again,
Okay,
it's
pattern, yeah,
yeah,
over
yeah,
the
it's a
long
pattern.
time. Yeah. Especially now I see a lot of like people are laid off, like working like few months and then laid off again. So it's just like a hard time to consider and to
Yeah.
make a decision about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's
I
talk
have I have one more, and
oh,
this
okay,
might
yeah.
be a shocking truth, and maybe this is something people don't want to hear. Um, but when I'm looking at candidate profiles on LinkedIn, when I'm hiring for startups, very often I prioritize the companies they worked at. So I'm looking for best in class companies, and these are companies that we all recognize and know, like Uber, Instacart, Patreon, Reddit, like big name companies or startup companies. If I see a candidate who's been at these sort of no name companies that I don't immediately recognize, then very often I'll just skip the LinkedIn profile. And that doesn't mean the candidate is bad, they just don't have what I'm looking at, we might be missing out on them. But that's sort of the truth. And I think a lot of other recruiters kind of do the same thing, is that if there's nothing that catches your attention, then it's easy to get overlooked. And again, coming back to how you can deal with that as a candidate, you need to know people who are connected to the companies.
Yeah, fair. I'm just thinking about the situation when I don't have maybe clear career trajectory. I'm not I don't have a fast career progression because I've been working for the company for 10 years, for example, or I might be a career switcher and I haven't worked on the highly recognized companies. So it's looks like a dead end for me.
Oh, actually, that just reminded me of something that I also look at and that hiring managers love is if you try to start your own company or if you're entrepreneurial. Like if you're a candidate in this situation, you've been at the same company for 10 years, you probably have great skills, a lot of experience. Something to try is to go and start your own business, put it on your LinkedIn, and then you have something to point at. Like, look, I understand what it means being in a startup because I'm doing my own company. I'm I'm not averse to risk. Like, see, like that. I think that's also another great signal that can help candidates kind of get noticed.
Great. Yeah, I always talk to people if you don't have like any like great experience, build your own project, like have a pet
Yeah.
project, like side project, do something that you can do by yourself. If you're a software engineer, you can create a website or a mobile application. If you're a product manager, you can do something else. So I
Hmm.
launched my own companies, but what I receive right now is a lot of sales calls from like a business development, like representative that trying to sell me a lot of like services. Yeah, that's what I have every day. Not recruiters, but
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about resume a bit. So I've heard that recruiters spend around 10 seconds scanning resumes. And is it true? How much time do you usually spend on the resume, and what's the most important area you look for in resumes? And you've already mentioned some Stanford.
Yeah,
Anything
yeah.
else you look for in resumes?
Yeah, I think my perspective might be different than an in-house recruiter, right? Because when you're an in-house recruiter, people send you resumes, you look at them. When you're an agency recruiter, you're trying to find candidates and match them to a role. So again, going kind of back to the theme from earlier is I look at a LinkedIn first. I don't see a resume until I've actually spoken to the candidate. So the first step to overcome is, getting recognized based on your LinkedIn. Once a candidate sends me their resume, I take a quick glance at it, usually before our call. I just want to understand what's in their resume, how much detail is in there, and maybe some of the things they've done, so I can ask questions that aren't in the resume and kind of fill in the gaps. But I don't spend more than 10 seconds. I think that's generally true. I just want to see how long they worked at a place and how they describe their experience is also very important. Like if it's a bunch of keywords and like fluff, I'm like, oh, this
Hmm.
this is bullshit. But that's not a problem because I'll talk to the candidate and try to tease out what the story is. And I think a big challenge is that candidates don't know how to talk about their experience, especially a lot of the technical candidates. They're super smart, great at writing code, but they don't really know how to sell themselves and how to talk about their experience in like a compelling way.
Ooh, let's talk about that. I think it's very important because I understand that you select LinkedIn, you ask them to send the resume. Is that correct? Yeah, and you
Yeah,
don't actually like read the resume. You spend like 10 seconds. And why do you ask to send the resume if you don't read it anyway? And you selected by LinkedIn. What's the purpose of resume for that?
yeah. So the resume might be important for the company or the hiring manager, especially if it's a technical role, because it will detail all the hard skills that the candidate has. It might have all the like the languages they know, the frameworks they know. And if you're an engineering manager, maybe that's important. But for me as the recruiter, that's not important. That's not really what I'm trying to figure out on what
Mm-hmm.
programming languages, you know.
Okay, so you decided to call your candidates, and you mentioned that they're not often a good presenters. So, which question do you usually ask in interviews, and what are you looking from candidates? How to tell a story that it would be attractive for you?
Yeah. So I think I always try to help candidates, and I don't pretend and you know,
Mhm.
like I'm upfront with them. I tell them that I liked your profile because I saw you were at Google and then you went to a smaller startup and you've been a staff level engineer for the past 3 years. So I always point out why I reached out to them. And then I say, I'm working with a company that's looking for, you know, similar experience to yours. And what they're looking for is back-end experience at a startup, and, you know, staff level seniority or something like that. So I try to tell the candidate up front what it is that I'm looking for to help them really talk about that experience. And I think that's important to do in interviews. Otherwise, the candidate has no idea what they're going into and is just trying to tell you their story.
Wow, this super important to hear that you as a recruiter actually give a hint, yeah, to your
I think
candidates.
I think you have to if you want the I think every candidate has like unique experiences. Um, but if they're coming in blind to an interview, you might miss it. So there's no harm in me telling them. And I think you know, some of us could do a better job on like prepping the candidate on what is it that I'm looking for versus giving these, I think they're stupid questions like, oh, tell me about a time when you failed, then how did you deal with it? Or like, what are your three strengths?
Oh my God, yeah, that's like I don't know. It's 99% of the companies actually ask those questions, behavioral questions. So I usually recommend people to read the job description and to build their story based on the job description. So how do you align as a recruiter with the job description? How meaningful actually job description is?
That's an excellent question, and I think it's a super important one. Recruiters, we have scorecards. We call them scorecards internally, and these are the characteristics we look for in candidates. And often it's things like startup experience, back-end experience, entrepreneurial DNA, things like that. So this is what matters to the company. And very often it doesn't line up with the job description. I see so many job descriptions that are vague. It doesn't really give you much context on what is it that they're looking for. So I think that as a candidate, you really have to try and come up with a theory at least on what's going to matter to the company. Like understand the product, understand the size of the company. What are they saying in the job description? But other than that, what do you think they're looking for?
Ooh, that's a quest, right? To
It's a
guess
quest.
first, yeah.
But there's some main themes, right? Like if it's a startup, they usually like startup experience. Um,
Focusing on business, right? Wearing a lot of hats, liking working to work in fast environment, right? So
mhm.
like building something, launching, yeah.
Another thing you can do is you can look at the current employees of the company, see who they hired, kind of look through their LinkedIn pages and see like, okay, what is it about these people that's similar? Like, oh, they all have a background from Stanford. Oh, maybe they won't love
Mhm.
my background. I don't know. I should address that in the interview. Or you notice that, oh, you know, all these people worked at large tech companies like Facebook and Google and Apple. Or there's
Mhm.
patterns you can recognize when you see the people who have already joined.
That's a great advice. Look at current employees and try to find patterns.
Yeah, it will
Cool.
give you some sort of an idea of what might be the things that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Let's come back to resumes, and we have to talk about ATS because, like, information about ATS is everywhere. And I know that you're not actually working with ATS closely because your way to find candidates is a bit different. But anyway, tell me about applicant tracking system and how it actually works and how to define keywords needed in resumes and how candidates actually guess those keywords to put in their resumes.
Yeah, this is one of your favorite topics, I know.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
great question.
How to cheat? Yeah, how to hack ATS? Yeah.
I think there's no way to hack an ATS. There's really outdated ones at like larger old school companies that, it's the same ATSs where you have to upload your resume and then still type everything into Windows. Oh, I hate those. I cannot stand those.
Yeah.
Like the Workday page comes up and then it takes you through, fill
Yeah.
in your education, even though it's in your
Uh-huh.
resume. Um, but there's newer ones. Like when you notice ATS is like Lever or Ashby, it's really just like a CRM where you upload your information and it kind of puts it into the right categories. It doesn't filter you out automatically as a candidate based on keywords. It just organizes it for the hiring manager to be able to find you, know when you applied, find your information. Um,
Mm-hmm. But how to guess those? I don't know. Like I know I've heard that ATS use keywords to filter. So, and how does those filters actually work?
in terms of the technology, I don't know how the filters work.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of ATSs don't automatically filter out people now, and it wouldn't matter
I
as long as
guess.
someone sees it.
Yeah, I guess that there is some settings in ITS to filter out like specific candidates. Like for example, if I'm looking for software developers with I don't know Java backgrounds, like 5+ years of experience, like working at Google, I can put that like Java, Google, whatever, like 5+ years. API and just filter out the resumes based on that. So
Hmm.
how how does it work? Like, and how to guess those keywords from like job description or a company's description or anything else to be selected by ATS?
Yeah, I don't know. There might be someone who's more experienced in that because the only ATS I come across are newer ones. There's one called
Mm-hmm.
Ashby,
Mm-hmm.
and what that does, it just basically collects all the applications, but it doesn't filter anyone out. Still, someone at the company
Mm-hmm.
looks at the application or
Ooh.
doesn't look at the application, but it's just there. It just shows that, these are the people who applied.
Okay. Okay. Even if there are like 100, the 1,000 applications,
It
they
just sits
still
there until someone looks at it.
interesting. Interesting. So, like I've heard also a hack to add as many keywords as possible at the resume. What do you think about it? Like when you open the resume, it's full of keywords. Like the resume is created for ATL system.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? How often do you see that type of resumes?
I've never seen that, but I believe that it happens. Uh, well, yeah, it's a tricky question, but here's what I think. I think that the only reason you might do that is to get recognized by the company, right? To make it to an actual person who looks at your resume. But if your resume is full of fluff and bullshit keywords, by the time the person looks at it, they're gonna be like, what did this person even do? All this blah blah here, like it doesn't make sense to me. It's too many words, too hard to understand, too much effort. So I might be wrong, but I think that probably the best thing to do is keep the resume neat and clean, really make it succinct. It shows your story so that when an actual person looks at it, it makes sense. Um, and then the challenge is how do I get it in front of the person? And I don't think it's by trying to hack the ATS. I think it's by knowing the right people, connecting with the right people, maybe even messaging the hiring manager on LinkedIn, uh, and somehow getting your resume there. But Yeah, this is kind of a gimmick trying to hack the
Yeah.
ATS. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's gonna work. Have you heard of
Yeah.
success stories hacking the ATS?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, I've
really?
heard. Yeah, I've heard the story, and actually in my YouTube channel when the lady added a lot of keywords, white keywords,
Hmm.
like yeah, because it's not visible for a human. You cannot read it, but
Yeah.
it's visible and readable by ATS system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and like it's very tiny, tiny size and white on the white paper, so you cannot even see that as a human.
Hmm.
But ATS could read it. So I've heard this hack, and I'm just curious about like your point of view as a recruiter about
Yeah.
like that.
Did she get hired or did she just get the interview?
She
Or
got
what
an
happened?
interview, like as far as I remember. I'm not sure about like the hiring process is like more complicated than being just selected because you need to pass through the interviews. You need to talk
Yeah.
to humans anyway, like your hiring manager, recruiters, like team members. But at least, it's some tricky part, like being selected. It's top of the funnel. The more you're selected, the more your opportunity to be like hired, right? If
Yeah.
you don't have interviews at all, something is wrong with your resume. Your resume is
Yeah.
probably not attractive for companies.
Yeah. I am curious to get your opinion on this. Like, imagine you're running a business, right? Imagine that you're trying to hire someone to run the business with you. So you need to really trust this person. Do you want to hire someone who like needs to trick an
Cheat?
ATS to have a conversation with you?
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. But it's not visible by a human. That's a trick. So as a recruiter or hiring manager, you cannot even see that. Those
It's
words like
true. Oh,
keywords. Yeah.
but let's say that there's two people, right? Like, let's say you're interviewing two people, right, to join you and your business. And one of them reached out to you on LinkedIn and said, like, hey, I really admire what you do. I've been following you for a long time. I've been doing something similar in the past, but I don't want to do it on my own anymore. I'd like to partner up. Do you want to have a coffee? And the other person somehow hacked their way through the ATS and landed on your computer. Like, which one would you rather want to talk to?
Oh yeah, of course, the candidate is number one because they have a personal approach. They reach out to me, they try to probably create a story for me. And as you mentioned at the beginning, how to reach out the recruiters to provide a value. That's probably the most important, not just asking for help, because I receive a lot of messages from people like, "Oh, I need your help," but yeah, you need my help, but I don't need like what you can do for me. Yeah, what's
Yeah.
value you can bring to me. So that's like a common mistake how people reach out to me and asking just for help.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I'm not a I don't know. Like how do you call the people who save other people, like I know
Oh, I know what you
rescuer,
mean. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. First responder, yeah. I'm not a first responder, sorry, that's not my job. Yeah. Yeah, might be mean, but it is like this is a business, this is my time. Yeah,
Yeah, and you can't
absolutely.
help everyone. So like how do you
Yes.
pick who you want to help?
Yeah, and I do a lot of free stuff like on my YouTube, trying to create like help a lot of people with like, let's say, our conversation. I bet it's super helpful for me, and I bet it's like very helpful for other folks, especially like with these resumes full of keywords. I personally saw a lot of examples, and
Mm.
as a human, I when I read those resumes, I realized like no, it's not like it's not for human. It's built for ATS. I
Yeah.
cannot read that. I can't understand. It's full of bullshit, as you mentioned. Like, yeah, where's your story? Yeah, I'm not a robot to read that. I agree with you. So let's talk about ChatGPT. Another,
Good
another,
segue. Yeah.
yeah, another funny topic we have to talk when we talk about resumes. So what do you think about using ChatGPT for resume creation or LinkedIn profile creation? Can you determine whether a resume is created by ChatGPT or like a human?
Mm.
Especially
Yeah.
like that, the way how ChatGPT frame the phrases like about. So like I'm a seasoned product manager. spearheading like something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think my opinion on ChatGPT, I think it's a great tool. I use it a lot to help my work. I use it mainly to help me like write code and create automations and Google Sheets or things that I don't know how to do on my own. It's super helpful for that. And I also use it to review and edit text because I think it's a very good writing tool. Um, ChatGPT is not very smart though. Like it can't just come up with smart things. There needs to be a human who gives it context. Um, so using it for a resume, I think is probably fine. But the way I would use it for resume is that I'd write the resume myself, maybe using basic language or just have the storyline at least, right? Like what story do I want my resume to tell? And then I write my resume and then I ask ChatGPT to like please review and edit the language for directness or for better understanding. Or I would just like to ask it for a review to make it more clear. I think that would be a great use for ChatGPT and resumes.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
But
think?
yeah, but if you ask ChatGPT to create a resume using my background, yeah, you can create some bullet points about your background and then ask ChatGPT to create a resume for you.
Yeah,
That's easy to recognize. At least, like, I don't know, I can easily recognize about a summary or bullet points created by ChatGPT because ChatGPT has very unique, specific like wording. Yeah,
that is true.
and it's annoying. It's annoying, especially when you look through like several like resumes and it's like pretty the same. Yeah. It's
Mm,
no uniqueness on those. And what I usually recommend is, yeah, create a resume by yourself, but you can ask ChatGPT to, I don't know, like proofread it, correct
hmm.
the grammar mistakes, make it like, I don't know, more native, especially if you're an immigrant, you cannot
Yeah,
phrase naturally. So make it more natural, this
yeah,
language. But then proofread that again and see, okay, I've never used like seasoned word in my resume. But ChatGPT is always put this seasoned product
yeah.
manager, seasoned engineer. When I see seasoned, yeah, because I've never used that before. And I learned
Hmm.
this word from ChatGPT because ChatGPT put this word in every resume. Every
Yeah,
candidate is seasoned someone, yeah, seasoned recruiter is this,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe
So
that's another thing. Like when you're talking about the resume, it's not a lot of space that you have to work with, right? Like you have to put your story and your experience on maybe one page, maybe two.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
to me, I don't really care how long it is, but if it's more than 2 pages, I'm like, okay, that's way too much. Um, but like the less words you can use, the better. Like if I want to say I'm a seasoned recruiter, like seasoned doesn't really add any value to the story. Like I'm a recruiter, okay, that's probably enough information, and I can put in other useful information. So the more you can cut out from the resume, the more condensed you can make it, the better. And ChatGPT could be actually very helpful with this. Like you have a very long resume, you could ask it to make it shorter, and it will keep the essence and like cut out all the fluff words.
perfect, perfect. So you can usually use ChatGPT, but be smart with that, right?
Hmm. I
Don't
love
you?
ChatGPT. I use it
I
all
love
every day.
I love Claude AI. I have
Oh, I've never used
paid.
it.
Oh, it's perfect because you can upload files. Because I work a lot with files, especially like from interviews like that, and I use also Order AI for that, like transcription. So what
Hmm.
I can do is to create an audio from our video interview, then transcribe those audio to text, then upload this file to Claude AI because Claude AI allows to upload files compared with ChatGPT. ChatGPT is limited, and we
Mm.
probably have a lot of pages of our conversation.
Yeah.
So then I ask Claude to maybe, I don't know, like proofread, make it like in a good way, create an article for that, make a summary, do whatever
Clever.
they want. Yeah. And then here we go. I have an article, I have a description, I have, I don't know, some summary, bullet points, main takeaways from our conversation, etc.
Hmm.
So So that's like a super yeah, useful tool. But yeah, using it for resume creation should be kind of like yeah, they should be very careful about that and
Yeah.
proofread like all the time. So it should be like a human resume anyway.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing they could use ChatGPT for, and I might do this, like two other use cases for ChatGPT as a candidate. One could be look at the hiring manager of the company you're applying for, copy their LinkedIn page, put it in ChatGPT and ask it to, give it context like, oh, this is the hiring manager's LinkedIn page of the company I'm applying for. Please help me craft a personalized outreach message. And
Wow.
then it could give you ideas on how to break the ice. Like, what do I even say to this hiring manager? Because that can be tricky. Like, I'm a candidate. It's maybe a CEO or engineering manager. Like, what do I say? Maybe you can get ideas from ChatGPT.
Yeah. That's a great advice. So what's another case? You said you have two cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another case, this one is a little bit for more brave candidates. If you want to cut through the noise and actually reach the hiring manager, you can consider sending a video outreach. So there's tools
Mm-hmm.
like Loom or Vidyard where you can record like a 30-second introduction of yourself and like send it to someone. So you could use ChatGPT to write a script for you for your video
Mm-hmm.
introduction. And again, you could say, I'm making a video introduction to the hiring manager. Here's their profile. Here's the job description. What can I say to introduce myself? And then maybe it will give
Mm-hmm.
you a script and you just kind of record yourself on the video and send it to them.
That's cool. Yeah. Have you ever received a video
Yeah, I
kind
have,
of?
and I've made my own too. A couple years ago, I was applying for a sales role with no experience in sales. I didn't have a sales background, but I sent it to the hiring manager and I got a reply. So we
Mhm.
started a conversation based off that.
Wow. Wow. Cool. And now, have you received videos from candidates? Video
Not from
introductions.
candidates,
Yeah.
but I also get a lot of sales emails, and sometimes
So
I do I do receive video uh,
yeah, I think
and
candidates are
salespeople.
super overwhelmed actually because you have to apply for hundreds jobs and it's super time consuming. That's what I've heard from
Definitely.
candidates. Yeah, it's like super hard to apply, even like, oh, tell me about easy apply at LinkedIn. So what do you think?
Yeah.
Is it like kind of valuable to use that? Because I've heard that like it's a lot of competition via easy apply on LinkedIn because it's easy. Yeah. It's better to
Yeah.
go to the company's website and apply through the company's website. What do you think about it?
Well, I'll answer the question and then I'll add another thought on it.
Uh-huh.
So what I've heard of LinkedIn Easy Apply, recruiters have LinkedIn Recruiter, which is a whole other product of LinkedIn. And you basically are able to create projects for a role that you're recruiting in, and then you can save candidates into the project. And what I heard that Easy Apply does is it basically puts your LinkedIn page into a folder of the recruiter. So nothing really happens. It just kind of moves you in there as an applied candidate. So depending on, like going back to the example before of the company, we're talking about 500 applications, but they're working with 3 recruiting agencies and like they're getting their candidates through referral networks. I think there's the same risk where you apply with Easy Apply and no one even knows you applied, like no one even sees your
Mm-hmm.
background. I think that's a huge risk in doing that. If it could work, like, depending on how many applications they receive, if you're able to get lucky and apply the same day they post the job, yeah, you'll
Mm-hmm.
probably get noticed.
Yeah.
So that's great. But if it's been open for a while, I
Yeah.
think there's a high chance that no one's going to see the application
Mm-hmm.
even.
So do you recommend to be first top like I don't know top 10% of candidates applying like first a few days
It's
to
hard to
apply?
time it though, right? Yeah, if you can, the
Yeah.
sooner you can apply, the better. But what I think, if I was a candidate applying for a new role, my strategy would be picking maybe 15 or 20 companies I really want to focus on instead of applying to 100 or 200. Um, but then really giving it a lot of my effort. So for all the 20 roles I'm applying for, I would try to network with the existing employees. I would try to reach out to the hiring manager, maybe connect with their recruiter, send a video outreach, interact with their LinkedIn posts, and try to get noticed. And it's a lot of effort. Yeah, it takes a ton of work, but applying to 500 roles also takes a ton of work. And I think the conversion will be higher if you are very targeted.
Yeah, I agree. The conversion rate is definitely higher, but you need to put more efforts on that you described. You have to reach out the recruiter, you have to create your video introduction, you have to, I don't know, like polish your LinkedIn profile, resumes, adjust your resumes, like your LinkedIn profile, etc.
Yeah.
I've had I had a story. You probably saw it on my LinkedIn. The candidate reached out to me, the client, and they said, like, I applied for 10,000 job
Oh my God.
postings. Yeah, I said, what? How much? Yeah, how many? And he said 10,000. And I asked, like, did you do that by yourself? And they said, no. Like almost all their family helped them to apply. So like you know that a lot of people sitting like for 3-4 months applying, and the resume
Yeah.
was so bad. Actually, that's why they didn't even have any responses. So
Yeah.
that's like such a waste of time for me doing that. So like they would rather spend time on, like, as you mentioned, building a connection with people. I don't know, like
And what you
polishing the
might
resume.
also get is you might also get feedback. If you're only focused on 20 and you're
Yeah.
focusing on connecting with the people, someone might tell you like, I appreciate you connecting, but your background isn't really a good fit for a company. Or, they might say like, Yeah, your resume looks like shit." Or, maybe, but
Oh,
at least you
yeah.
learn along the way, instead of
Yeah.
applying to 10,000 and getting a rejection letter with no explanation.
I
Uh,
think recruiters would never say that, like, your resume like a shit. Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't say it. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, they wouldn't say it that way, but they could say like, your resume doesn't really showcase your strengths, or I don't understand what the storyline is in your resume, or
Yeah.
can we add some more context on like why you joined this company or why you left so early, or they could give pointers.
Yeah. That's why like career coaches or like consultant like me helps a lot because we can tell the truth. Yeah. Your
Yeah.
resume is like shit. Yeah, sorry, guy. You need to polish
Yeah.
it. So
But
tell me, yeah.
I was just gonna say, I was thinking like psychologically too, though, right? If you're a candidate, I can understand if you're desperate to get a job and like have money coming in. Yeah, you're gonna be like frantic and apply to every job you can find. But that mindset is maybe not the best mindset to be in if you actually do get an interview, because then you feel desperate and you want to do well, you want to impress everyone, instead of really focusing on, is this the right company for me? Is this the right job for me? And this is a privileged position to be in, but like if you need a job, you need a job, you need money. I understand. But if you can afford to do it, it's probably better to be picky and really try to find a place where you want to work and you think you would fit in well with the company, and come into the interview with the like from a position of strength. Like, yeah, I'm not applying to 300 jobs. I applied to 20. This is one of my top choices. These are the reasons I want to work here. These are my strengths, why I think I could be a great fit. If it's not a fit, it's not a fit, but I'd like to, explore.
That's a great advice. Yeah. So, in talking about desperation, I want to ask about this green badge on LinkedIn, open to work. What do you think about this badge? And I've heard from some people, I don't want to put this green badge because it shows me as a desperate person. So, what do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I think I've spoken to great candidates who put that they're open to work. To me, it just says, okay, I know they're on the market, they're actively looking. So there's only a limited amount of time I have. Like the top software engineers, in 2 weeks, they're gone. Like I speak to them 2 weeks later, they're already landed a position. Um,
Mm-hmm. So
so
it's not
I
a
don't
bad
see it
sign
as a bad
for
thing.
you. Okay. So
Yeah.
you don't feel that they're like desperate putting this green badge on the avatar, like profile picture.
I don't think so. I would, if I was looking for a role, I would, just show everyone that I'm looking for a new position. If if people want to reach out, like
Yeah.
then they know
Okay.
that they can reach out.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, don't be afraid of putting green beige. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be afraid.
Okay, okay. So I have a few more questions for you, and let's talk about interviews. We've already talked a bit, like what are you usually asking, but what the main mistakes do candidate make in interviews, and what are the main reason you reject candidates? So, and
Yeah.
you've already mentioned that, like a mindset, like desperate mindset. What else you can add here?
Yeah, I think the desperate mindset is a cause of the lot of the mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
One of the mistakes is wanting to have all the experience that you're asking about, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
trying to make up things, that like for instance, let's say it's an engineering manager position, and we ask the candidate, do you have experience managing teams? And maybe they don't, but they try to say like, oh yes, I had one person I kind of managed on this, I mentored this person, and kind of being maybe not completely honest about it. I think it's a mistake. What's better is saying, I don't have formal experience managing a team, but I was looked at as a mentor in the group, and I often help new hires kind of ramp up, um, which still could be fine, right? If they want to manage a team, maybe the company offers them that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's
Perfect.
that's one of them. Just be like honest about your experience.
Fair. Anything
Another
else?
one,
Yeah.
yeah, another one is not knowing what your story is. And here's the components of your story. You need to be able to explain why you joined the company, why you left the company. You need to be able to explain what you worked on specifically with all the details and what impact it had or why it was important. And then you also need to it's helpful if you have a clear understanding of what you're looking for next,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you're in the position where you're applying to 300 roles, you don't really have a great story on what you're looking for. You're just looking for income, which is fine. Like everyone needs money. But it's going to be very hard to answer the question then, like, what are you looking for in your next role?
Yeah, yeah. This is not a great answer. Yeah, I'm looking for, I'll just say, like a new job. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
looking for a salary. I need to pay my bills. Yeah.
yeah.
What do you expect from this question? What are you looking for? What's the best answer for you?
Um, the best answer is an honest answer. Usually what I'm looking for is because I'm working with early stage startups, I want people who are excited about joining an early stage startup. Um, right? Because there's people who say, yes, I'm interested in joining a startup, but I want to get $400,000 cash compensation. So it's not a great fit. And they might be a strong candidate, but it's just a misalignment of what the candidate wants and what the company can offer. Um, so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I'm just looking for, does the candidate know what they want?
Yeah, yeah.
Because if they do and they end up getting hired, then most likely it'll be a good match, right? Like the Tinder
Mm-hmm.
analogy, if you know what type of person you're looking for, you go out on a date, everything goes well, then maybe it's a
Yeah.
long-term relationship. Versus if you're just swiping right on everyone and then you go meet everyone
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like this one date here, one date there. It's like a waste of everyone's time.
Yeah. So salary expectation, it's a very tricky question for candidates. And sometimes when recruiters ask you about like your salary expectation, what's the best answer for you? Especially when candidates definitely want to get more.
Yeah,
Recruiters
yeah.
probably have some brackets, right?
Yeah, so there's usually a band or a range of compensation, and it often depends on how the interviews go and how they level the candidate. What I try to do is I always tell the candidate in the first conversation, like I ask them what compensation they're looking for. If they say I don't really know or I'm flexible, I'll tell them, okay, this role they're offering anywhere between, 160, 180. Is that in the ballpark that works for you? Just to make
Mm-hmm.
sure we're in the same kind of universe with expectations.
So does it mean that like I'm flexible is a good answer and that you provide a range? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm flexible is a good answer. I'm flexible for the right opportunity, but maybe you're not, right? Like maybe you live in a high
Yeah.
cost of living area and you need to make at least 100,000. Then
Mm-hmm.
that's a good answer too, saying like, I need to make at least 100,000, but otherwise, depending on the opportunity, the fit, the company, I might be open.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing I think candidates should be thinking about is really like how much they want to be making and how much they think it's worth. Because maybe you're a super experienced candidate, you go somewhere to a big company like Facebook, they might pay you double what a startup pays you. And maybe that's important to you. Then you should go to a big company if you want to make more money.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's more important to you to learn and see how a company is built and kind of like have interesting challenges,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you go to startup and accept that you make less money. So I
Yeah.
think it all depends on what's important.
Yeah. That's a good point. I'm just thinking the situation when, and I've heard that a lot from my folks that they do need a job. So they do
Yeah.
need money, and they're actually flexible right now. They can accept a lower offer just because they need a job. So, and that's why, like, this is a tricky question because they want, for example, like 200,000.
Hmm.
But they're okay to accept like 150,000, for
Yeah.
example. And how to be like here, like for example, you interviewing a candidate and you have a range like I don't know 120, 170, and the candidate says they need I don't know 200. Then you said, unfortunately, we don't have 200. Like the maximum I can pay is 170. And the candidate say, okay, yeah, 170 is fine. Is it a red
Yeah.
flag for you, like lowering in their expectation? What do you think about this situation?
Yeah, I think that it's not about what you want to make. It's about what you are able to get in the market elsewhere. So if you're a candidate interviewing with companies, some are offering you 200, this one's offering you 170, but you love the company,
Mm-hmm.
then the answer is like, I'm willing to accept 170 because I really love the team. I want to work here, but other opportunities that I'm not as excited about, they're, in the 200,000 range. I'd love
Mm-hmm.
to get closer to that. Um, but if you just want 200 because you want 200, then the company's not offering it, then it's not
Yeah.
a fit, right? And it's
Okay.
not because you're less of a candidate, and not because the company wants to lowball you. It's just like it's different expectations,
Yeah.
different needs.
So you need to prove that you really love the company to accept a lower offer, right? Otherwise, it might be a red flag, like because, okay, you accept that because you're desperate and you would quit the job as soon as you can, right? That's
Yeah.
also a great approach for that. So,
Or another way to answer, you could also say like my minimum is 170, but I'd really love to get closer to 200 if it's possible.
mm-hmm,
And then
mm-hmm.
and then the employers are also human and they want to, if you're a candidate, if I'm an employer and I'm hiring someone, I want them to be happy. And I don't want to give them an offer that they're like, fine, I'll take it, but I won't be happy. Like,
Yes.
so if they tell me like minimum is 170, but I'd really be happier with 200, maybe I'll make a compromise and be like, okay, how about
Okay.
185?
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I have another question, and I
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
ask that just because also I work with a lot of people, and I have a lot of viewers of my YouTube channel. They also always ask about visa situation and people outside of
Mm,
the US trying to find a job. So I see like two. Complicated situation first is to like candidates without work authorization and visas are like 99% are rejected.
yeah.
That's tell me about that, why that happened. And the second, why, how people outside of the US to get a job in the US? Yeah, like
Hmm. Yeah,
remote position. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about it?
that's a tough question. I don't deal a lot with visas. The candidates I speak to usually have a visa, but what they
Mm-hmm.
need is a visa transfer. If they change positions, they need to transfer their visa.
Mm-hmm.
From what I understand, that's pretty straightforward situation. It's not too difficult, but it's much harder and expensive to sponsor a visa for someone.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Is that the
Usually,
reason why they are rejected? Because
probably,
it's like expensive for the company to sponsor the visa, right?
probably. And it's
Okay.
a lot of extra work, right? If you're a
Uh-huh.
company and you have options, why not go with the easy option?
That's true.
It's
The
it's
situation
just
on the market is like that, that they can select from the candidate that already have visas and work authorization, right? And
yeah, exactly.
they don't need to deal with people without like visas. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it put those people in very bad position right now. They want to work for the US companies, but they cannot because of visas.
It's
So
difficult.
talking about offshore team or any remote outside of the US workers, do you know anything about that opportunities? Or they have
The-
to be in the US, like at least at your experience?
yeah, the companies I work with, small startups, might be very different than big tech companies, right? Some are open to Canada. They're open to remote in Canada or in the US. Outside of that, I haven't worked with a company that's open to
Mm-hmm.
like nationwide.
Well, why do you think that happens? Because people outside of the US are actually cheaper.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but well, maybe. So an interesting trend I'm seeing is 90% of the startups we work with now are all in person, and so they're working together. It's just the culture. And if someone's abroad,
Mm-hmm.
like they can't come into the office. So that's problematic. Um, Time zone difference could be a challenge, I imagine. You know, if someone's in Russia and they're like 10 hours ahead, like
Oh yeah.
it's nighttime there when people are working here. It's probably pretty difficult. Maybe the tax situation is difficult. Like there's a lot of logistics that go into it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So, my last question about your recommendation. Can you please give some recommendations to candidates who are struggling in the job search situation in the US right now?
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
already
I
mentioned like networking, some advice, great advice. So
Yeah, maybe I can
recommend.
summarize all the
Yeah.
tips that
Yeah.
we talked about today. Well, actually,
Perfect.
first, number one is don't be desperate, right? Like if you're looking for a job, obviously you need to make money, but take a job, whatever job you want for the money, but for your ideal role, like be strategic about it and
Mm.
take the time. Number one is make sure that your LinkedIn page tells your story for you. If someone looks at it, it needs to be clear. Like otherwise you will get overlooked. So that's the number one challenge. You need to get your foot in the door. Second one, we talked about apply to jobs strategically. So pick out, a handful, maybe 15, 20 jobs, companies that you'd really like to work for, and start networking with the people, connect with the hiring manager, send them a video message, use ChatGPT to write an introduction email, connect with the employees there, learn more about the company. And maybe if there's not a fit now, a year later, they're hiring again and you'll be in their mind and you can join later. So it's always good to kind of plant the seed that you're interested
Yeah.
in joining the company. It'll also help you psychologically because you'll be like, yeah, I'm selective. I won't just go on a date with any company who wants me. I want these ones. Um,
Perfect.
what else did we talk about? Oh, in interviews, don't pretend that you have experience that you don't actually have because people will discover it sooner or later. And you don't want to be the person who lied in the interview and then got fired later on.
So fake it until you make it doesn't work here.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they'll discover you, and then you'll have short stints on your resumes, and you'll have to explain it in your next interview, like, oh, why only 3 months at a company?
Yeah, That's yeah, that's very good advice.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, another thing, you can try and connect with recruiters. I think recruiters can be valuable to help with the resume, maybe share tips on your LinkedIn, connect you with companies that you're interested in interviewing with. And the last one is don't worry about the ATS and your resume details too much. Just make sure that your story as a candidate makes sense.
Perfect. Perfect. I think that's a lot of great advice, David. Yeah, thank you so much. It was
Yeah,
very insightful, even for me. Even for me,
yeah.
I learned a lot from our conversation today, and I'm sure this episode will help many people improve their resumes, get interviews, and ultimately receive their desired job offer.
I
If
hope
you're
it
looking,
helps. Yeah.
yeah, it will help. Yeah, it's super helpful. And if you are looking for a job in the US, and if you need an honest feedback on your resume, please reach out to me. You can find me at my website, adanaumava.com, or any social media I have, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, I don't know, like here on YouTube. Share this video on your social media with friends who might be interested in these tips. And of course, subscribe to the channel to not miss any other helpful videos about immigration to the US and job search. And that's all for now, and see you in the next episode. Thank you, David, again, and thank you everyone for watching it.
Thank you.